My name is Gloria, and I'm 30 years old. I'm an accountant, and I've always been someone who values order and predictability in life. I like things to be planned out, and I find comfort in routines. But everything changed when life introduced me to someone unexpected, Aiden. It all started at a mutual friend's birthday party. As soon as I walked in, I spotted him across the room. He was laughing loudly, the center of attention, effortlessly drawing people to him. I, on the other hand, was content to remain in the background, keeping to myself. But my friend Kenna had other plans. "Gloria, you have to meet Aiden. He's hilarious," she insisted, practically dragging me over to him. I remember thinking to myself, this is going to be awkward, but when I approached him, I was surprised. Aiden was relaxed and easygoing. His laughter was contagious, and before I knew it, I was laughing more in that one evening than I had in months. "Hey, I'm Aiden. And you are?" he asked with a smile that lit up his face. "Gloria. Nice to meet you," I replied, a little more eagerly than I expected. Aiden cracked a joke about how accountants are secretly wild party animals in disguise, and I couldn't help but burst out laughing. The rest of the evening was spent in easy conversation. Aiden was into graphic design, loved indie music, and had a passion for cooking. I left the party feeling lighter and happier. Aiden had this amazing way of making everything feel fun and exciting. Over the next few weeks, we started seeing a lot of each other. He'd surprise me with takeout from the coolest new restaurant in town, or tickets to a concert I hadn't even known about. "Life's too short for routines, Gloria. You've got to mix it up," he'd say with a grin. I was drawn to his spontaneity, a complete contrast to my organized and structured life. Aiden had this natural ability to pull me out of my comfort zone, and I loved it. But as time passed, I began to notice things that made me uneasy. He would spend money carelessly, casually dropping $100 on a night out without a second thought. He'd hop from one job to another whenever he got bored. I decided to talk to him about it one evening, when we were at my place. "Aiden, don't you think you should be a little more careful with money? Maybe try sticking with a job a bit longer?" I asked, choosing my words carefully. He just laughed it off. "Gloria, you worry too much. Life's all about having fun. Money and jobs, they come and go." I wanted to argue, to explain that life doesn't always work that way, but I didn't. Instead, I told myself that it was just Aiden being Aiden, and I let it slide. When Aiden proposed, it came completely out of the blue. We were walking through the park one afternoon, and without any warning, he blurted out, "Marry me, Gloria. Let's make this adventure official." It was impulsive, irrational, and so Aiden. But despite the whirlwind nature of it all, I said yes. We moved in together, and I thought this would be the perfect start to our life as a couple. Maybe, just maybe, opposites really could attract and hold everything together. However, over time, the carefree, adventurous spirit that I had once loved about Aiden began to feel more like a growing divide between us. The reality of his laid-back attitude started to clash with my more cautious, responsible nature. The first big crack in our relationship came on a Thursday evening. I had stayed late at work, catching up on some complicated accounts. I was exhausted and starving as I arrived home, looking forward to a quiet night. But instead, I was met with chaos. The living room was covered in bags from various stores, and Aiden was lounging on the couch, wearing a self-satisfied grin. "Gloria, you're home. Check out these amazing deals I found today," he exclaimed, waving his arms toward the piles of shopping bags. I dropped my keys on the table, feeling a tight knot form in my stomach. "Aiden," I said, trying to stay calm. "We talked about this last week. We need to save money and cut down on unnecessary expenses." He just shrugged and flipped through a magazine as if nothing was wrong. Yeah, I know," he mumbled, not really listening. At that moment, I realized that the gap between our worlds was growing wider. I had always been the one to plan and stay responsible, while Aiden seemed to live in the moment, oblivious to the consequences. And as much as I loved the excitement he brought into my life, I began to wonder how long I could live in a world that felt so unstable. It was clear Aiden didn't see the problem. "But these were on sale, and we needed some of these things," he said, trying to defend his purchases. I picked up a receipt from one of the bags and felt my heart sink. Aiden, these are luxury items, not essentials. We have a budget for a reason. I could feel the stress rising inside me. He looked up at me, his expression shifting from casual to defensive. Come on, Gloria. Don't be such a killjoy. We deserve to treat ourselves once in a while. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice steady. It's not about being a killjoy, Aiden. It's about being responsible. We have bills to pay, a mortgage, and we agreed we would save for emergencies. He rolled his eyes, tossing the magazine aside with a sigh. You always make a big deal out of everything. Can't you just relax for once? I felt a pang of frustration, but I didn't want to argue. This wasn't just about the shopping. It was about something much bigger. Then one morning, I found an envelope on the dining table addressed to Aiden. It was from his workplace. I was curious and opened it, and as I read the contents, my heart sank. Aiden had resigned from his job, without even telling me. When he came downstairs for breakfast, I confronted him. Aiden, what is this? Did you quit your job? Why didn't you discuss this with me first? He poured himself a cup of coffee, unfazed. Yeah, I quit. That job was a dead end. I need something better. Something that excites me. I could feel my frustration rising. But how are we going to manage our expenses? We need 2 incomes. Aiden, you know this? He shrugged, taking a sip of his coffee. We'll figure it out. We always do. You need to stop worrying so much. How can I not worry? I asked, my voice growing louder. We have financial commitments, Aiden. This isn't just about you or me. It's about us, our future. Aiden set his coffee cup down with a thud. I can't deal with this right now, Gloria. You're suffocating me with all this talk about money and responsibility. I watched him walk away, leaving me standing in the kitchen with the resignation letter in my hand. I felt more alone than I had in a long time. At first, I tried to be patient, hoping Aiden's unemployment was just a short-term setback. But as the days passed, it became a persistent source of tension between us. Every morning, as I prepared for work, I'd find Aiden lounging on the couch, either watching TV or scrolling through his phone. It was a painful reminder of our growing financial strain. Aiden, it's been weeks since you quit your job. Have you started looking for something new? I asked one morning, trying to hide my concern as I adjusted my work badge. He barely looked up from his phone. Yeah, I'm looking, but nothing has caught my eye yet. I'm waiting for the right opportunity. I felt my patience snap. The right opportunity? Aiden, we have bills piling up. We can't just wait forever. Finally, he glanced up at me, his expression a mix of annoyance and indifference. Gloria, you need to chill. I know what I'm doing. I'll find something soon. Days turned into weeks, and the situation didn't improve. I began taking on extra hours at work to cover our bills, but the exhaustion started to wear me down. One evening, I came home to find the living room covered in pizza boxes and empty beer cans. Aiden was sprawled out on the couch, snoring lightly, with the TV blaring in the background. I couldn't contain my frustration. Aiden, I called out sharply. He stirred and blinked sleepily at me. What's up? He mumbled, rubbing his eyes. What's up? Look at this mess. I gestured around the room. And dinner? Were you planning to cook tonight? My patience was running thin. Aiden sat up, yawning. Oh, I forgot. Got caught up with the game. Just grab something on your way home next time. The lack of responsibility, the growing strain on our finances, and Aiden's careless attitude were wearing me down. I wanted to fix things, but it seemed like we were drifting farther apart every day. I felt a wave of frustration and anger wash over me. I'm working extra hours just to make ends meet, Aiden. The least you could do is help around the house. I said, my voice tight with exhaustion. He stretched lazily and stood up, completely unbothered. I didn't ask you to work extra, he replied. You're choosing to stress yourself out. Choosing to stress out. I shot back, my frustration boiling over. Aiden, if I don't, how are we going to survive? You're sitting here doing nothing while I'm out there working to keep us afloat. My voice was rising, filled with frustration. His expression hardened, and I could see the tension building. I'm not doing nothing, he snapped. I'm trying to find a job. You think I like being stuck at home, sitting on the couch all day? You're not even trying, I retorted, hurt and angry. This isn't what I signed up for when we got married. Aiden scoffed, clearly annoyed. Well, sorry for not living up to your perfect standards, Gloria. I didn't realize I married a nag. His words hit me hard. A nag? Was it so much to ask for a partner who actually contributed? A nag? I repeated, shocked by his response. Is it too much to ask for you to help out? I don't understand how you can be so relaxed about our situation. He grabbed his jacket and headed for the door. I need some air, he muttered. I can't deal with this right now. The tension in our home was unbearable. Every conversation we had about responsibility or our future seemed to end in a heated argument, leaving behind nothing but a heavy silence. I was exhausted, physically from working extra hours, and emotionally from the constant strain of trying to hold everything together. One evening, as I sat at the kitchen table sorting through bills and trying to make sense of our finances, I realized something had to change. I couldn't keep doing this. I couldn't keep carrying the weight of everything on my own. Aiden, I began, my voice firm but steady. We need to talk. This can't go on any longer. He barely looked up from his phone, his face showing no sign of concern. What now, Gloria? It's about your job situation, or rather, the lack of one, I said, frustration creeping into my tone. It's been months, Aiden. We're sinking here, and you don't seem to care. He let out a heavy sigh. Here we go again. Look, I'm trying, okay? Do you think I enjoy this? Do you think I like seeing you stressed all the time? Then do something about it, I said, my voice rising with a mix of anger and desperation. Find a job, any job. We need 2 incomes, Aiden. We agreed on this when we got married. He stood up abruptly, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. You think it's so easy, huh? Just snap my fingers and a job appears? You don't get it, Gloria. The market's tough. I need something that suits me. Something that suits you? I repeated, incredulous. We don't have the luxury of waiting for the perfect job, Aiden. We have bills, a mortgage, responsibilities. Aiden started pacing around the room, running his hands through his hair, clearly frustrated. I can't deal with this pressure, Gloria. It's constant with you. You're always on me about money, about work. I can't take it. I stood up, facing him head on. This isn't about nagging, Aiden. This is about our life, our future. If you can't understand that, then maybe this isn't going to work. Aiden stopped pacing and looked at me, his eyes cold. What are you saying? I took a deep breath, the weight of my words heavy in the air. I'm saying that if you don't find a job, if you don't start taking our situation seriously, then maybe we need to rethink this marriage. The words hung between us like a storm cloud, and for a moment, Aiden said nothing. His face was hard, but there was no apology, no recognition of the gravity of what I had said. Without a word, he grabbed his jacket and stormed out, slamming the door behind him. I sank back into my chair, my hands trembling slightly. I hadn't wanted it to come to this. I had hoped we could work through our issues, but the endless cycle of arguments and indifference had worn me down. Days passed, and I heard nothing from Aiden. The silence in the house was both a relief and a worry. Part of me felt free from the tension, but another part of me feared that this could be the beginning of the end. Would he come back? Would we ever find a way through this? I didn't know anymore. Late one evening, as I sat alone in the quiet of our home, my phone rang, breaking through the stillness and jolting me out of my thoughts. I quickly answered, my heart already racing. Mrs. Smith? This is the hospital. Your husband, Aiden Smith, was brought in after an accident. He's stable, but he sustained some injuries. The words hit me like a punch to the gut, and before the rest of the message even registered, my mind was spinning. I couldn't focus on the rest of what the nurse was saying. I was too consumed with worry and fear. I rushed to the hospital as quickly as I could, my thoughts a chaotic mix of fear, confusion, and 1,000 questions I didn't have answers for. The sterile, impersonal atmosphere of the hospital felt worlds away from the whirlwind of emotions I was trying to navigate. When I finally arrived and found Aiden's room, seeing him lying there with a bulky cast on his leg and a look of pain on his face struck me hard. This was a version of Aiden I'd never seen before, vulnerable in a way that stirred something deep inside me. As I sat beside his bed, I watched him for a moment, hoping the sight of me would give him some comfort. His eyes fluttered open slowly, and for a brief moment, he looked confused. But then recognition set in. "Gloria, you're here," he said, his voice weak and full of emotion, guilt and relief mixed together. I forced a smile, trying to keep the conversation light despite everything I was feeling. "Yeah, I'm here. How are you feeling?" He winced as he tried to adjust his position. "Like I've been run over," which, I guess, isn't far from the truth. I tried to hold back my own emotions. "The doctor said you're lucky. The injury could have been worse, but it's a severe fracture. You'll need time to heal." Aiden exhaled deeply, looking at me with a combination of sadness and regret. "Gloria, I'm sorry. I've been such a fool. And now this." His voice trailed off, and I could see the pain in his eyes, both physical and emotional. I sighed, a mix of frustration and sympathy filling me. "Aiden, we'll sort through all of that later. Right now, you need to focus on getting better." But he wasn't ready to drop the subject. His tone had a hint of urgency, like he had something important to say. "No, I need to say this. I've been self-centered, and I've put you through so much. This accident, it's made me see things differently." I wasn't sure how to respond. Part of me wanted to hear him out, but another part of me was cautious. "I appreciate you saying that, Aiden, but it's going to take more than words to fix what's been broken between us." He nodded solemnly. "I know, and I want to make it right. I'll find a job as soon as I'm able. I'll help out more around the house, whatever it takes." Before I could respond, a nurse entered to check on Aiden's condition. After she left, we picked up where we had left off. "Aiden, it's not just about the job or the housework," I said, my voice steady but filled with emotion. "It's about us. Our relationship. We've been drifting apart, and it's going to take real effort from both of us to bridge that gap." He reached out, taking my hand gently in his. "I know I've messed up, Gloria, but lying here, all I can think about is you. How much you mean to me, and how I've taken you for granted." His words hit me deeply. They were touching, but I couldn't shake the caution that had built up over the months. "I want to believe you, Aiden. I really do. But we've had so many false starts. I need to see that you're serious about making a change." Before he could respond, the nurse returned with a cheerful demeanor, completely at odds with the heavy mood in the room. "We're going to start some mild physical therapy soon. It will be a journey, but you're in good hands," she said, before leaving us alone again. After she was gone, Aiden looked at me with a new resolve in his eyes. "I know it's going to be a long road, but I want you with me, Gloria. If you're willing to give me that chance." Bringing Aiden home from the hospital marked the beginning of a new, challenging chapter in our lives. His broken leg meant he was confined to either the bed or the couch for the foreseeable future, and his dependence on me for even the simplest tasks was a stark change from the independent person he had once been. The first few days were a whirlwind of adjusting to this new routine. I had to juggle my work commitments with playing nurse to Aiden, all while trying to stay calm and focused. It was exhausting. One evening, after an especially long day at work, I walked through the door, ready to collapse from exhaustion. I came home one evening, exhausted from work, only to find Aiden staring at the TV with a frown on his face. "Aiden, how are you feeling? Do you need anything?" I asked, dropping my bag on the floor and kicking off my shoes. He turned his head to look at me, his expression sour. "Where have you been? I've been calling out for help to get to the bathroom, and you are nowhere to be found." A wave of guilt washed over me, mixed with frustration. "Aiden, I had to stay late at work. You know how demanding my job is. I can't just leave whenever I want." He scoffed, his voice dripping with resentment. "Well, maybe your job shouldn't be more important than your husband." As the days went on, Aiden's demands grew. He expected specific meals at specific times, his medication to be handed to him exactly when he needed it, and constant attention. If anything was off, he made sure to voice his displeasure. One Saturday, I spent hours preparing his favorite dish, hoping it would lift his spirits. When I finally set the plate down in front of him, he barely looked at it before looking up at me with disdain. "This is what you made. It's too salty. Can't you do anything right?" I felt my patience snap. "Aiden, I've been running around all day, trying to take care of you and keep up with everything else. A little appreciation wouldn't hurt." He sneered and pushed the plate away. "Appreciation? I'm stuck in this bed because of my leg, and all I ask for is a decent meal." My hands trembled with anger. "You know what, Aiden? I'm not your servant. I'm your wife, and I deserve some respect." His eyes flashed with anger, and he shot back. "Respect? You want respect? How about respecting my condition? I'm the one who's suffering here." I walked away to cool down, but the words stung deeply. I realized something was changing in Aiden. The sweet, apologetic person I had seen in the hospital seemed to have vanished. In his place was someone who seemed to take pleasure in belittling me at every turn. Then one day, I returned home from work earlier than usual. The house, usually quiet at this time of day, was filled with the unexpected sound of laughter coming from Aiden's room. My heart pounded, and a sense of dread filled me as I tiptoed closer. Peering through the slightly open door, I saw Aiden sitting up, animated and cheerful, chatting on the phone. "Oh yeah, I've settled in quite well here," he said with a laugh. "Gloria doesn't have a clue." I froze. My breath caught in my throat.
Who was he talking to? What was he talking about?
A cold shiver ran down my spine as his words replayed in my mind. I quickly backed away, my mind racing. Then, to cover my shock, I slammed the door to announce my presence and walked into his room with a composed expression. Aiden quickly changed his demeanor when he heard the door slam. He ended the call abruptly, feigning weakness. "Gloria, you're back," he said, his voice a little too sweet. "How are you feeling?" I asked, masking my turmoil with a concerned smile. "Just the same," he replied, avoiding my gaze. The next day, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. I contacted a private detective I knew from a previous work case. "I need you to find out everything about my husband's activities," I told him over the phone. "And there's a woman he might be involved with." While the detective did his work, I kept up the appearance of being the dutiful wife. It was agonizing, pretending everything was normal when every instinct I had screamed that my world was falling apart. 3 weeks later, the detective got back to me. The news was worse than I had imagined. Aiden had been in an accident with his mistress. Her name was listed in the police reports. The detective gave me the name of the woman. Everything I had feared had come true. Aiden wasn't just failing to meet my expectations. He had been lying to me all along. And now, I was faced with the painful reality of betrayal. A quick search on social media confirmed my worst fears. Aiden's mistress had a profile full of pictures of them together, intimately close, laughing, and enjoying each other's company. But that wasn't all. The detective had uncovered something far more damaging: Aiden's gambling debts. The amount was staggering, enough to potentially drown us financially. I sat in the living room, staring at the evidence of Aiden's betrayal laid out before me. A mix of anger, disbelief, and heartache flooded my mind. How could I reveal the truth to him? How could I make him understand the full weight of what he'd done? For now, I kept these thoughts to myself, waiting for the right moment to turn the tables. As the morning light filtered through the curtains, I steeled myself for the confrontation ahead. Taking a deep breath, I walked into Aiden's room, where he lay in his bed, still recovering from the broken leg. I had to stay calm and focused. This was going to be the performance of a lifetime. "Aiden, I need to talk to you about something important," I said, my voice calm but firm. He looked up at me, irritation flashing across his face. "What now, Gloria? Can't you see I'm in pain here?" I held my composure. "I've decided for your better care. You're being moved to a state medical facility tomorrow. They're better equipped to handle your rehabilitation." Aiden's face shifted from annoyance to panic.
"What? No.
You can't do that. I want to stay here with you. I didn't flinch. I'm sorry, Aiden, but this is for the best. I'll start packing your things. As I turned toward the door, I heard the frantic rustling of sheets behind me and Aiden's hurried voice calling someone on the phone. She's sending me to some facility. You have to help me. About an hour later, a car pulled up outside and Aiden's mistress barged into the house. She walked with determination and concern written all over her face, heading straight for Aiden's room with me trailing behind. I'm here to take him with me. He's not going to any facility, she declared, her voice full of ownership. I entered the room, my heart pounding, but my face remained calm. I'm glad you're here, I said flatly. This was all a setup to get you to show your hand. Aiden and his mistress exchanged confused glances, their faces slowly filling with fear. What are you talking about, Gloria? Aiden asked, his voice trembling. I held up the evidence, the photos collected by the detective of them together. This is the proof of your affair. I'll be seeking compensation for this betrayal. The mistress laughed, though there was a nervous edge to it. I can pay whatever you want. He's coming with me. I smiled thinly, confident in what I had to say next. You should know that he's neck-deep in gambling debts, and without a job, he can't afford his medical bills or insurance. Are you ready to handle all of that? Her face drained of color as the gravity of my words hit her. Aiden's eyes darted between us, a look of helplessness on his face. But I can't deal with all that, she stammered, her confidence cracking. Seems like he's your problem now, I said with cold finality, turning to leave the room. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of legal proceedings. I filed for divorce, making sure I received a fair settlement to compensate for Aiden's betrayal and deceit. His mistress, now burdened with his financial and medical responsibilities, quickly found herself overwhelmed. Rumors began circulating about their strained relationship, filled with constant arguments and financial troubles. Aiden's downfall was a direct result of his actions, and now his mistress was trapped in the web of consequences he had spun. As for me, I found peace in my newfound freedom. The betrayal had hurt, and it had shaken me, but it also taught me a valuable lesson about trust and deception. Through all the pain, I discovered a strength within myself I never knew I had. I moved forward, determined to build a life of my own, one free from lies, betrayal, and the shadows of the past. I knew now that my happiness was in my own hands.
I will never forget what my father told me when I announced my engagement. He took me to the side and said, "Sophia, are you sure you want to marry this man, Adriel? I know you're in love with him, but I don't think he's a good match for you." I was surprised by what he said. "Why are you saying this, Dad? He loves me and respects me. I don't care if he's not as well off as us," I explained. "Sophia, I built my riches from nothing, as you are aware. I would never disrespect a person who does not belong to my economic class. But Adriel is a very sketchy man, and his mother is no different," he concluded. "What do you mean, Dad? I don't understand," I asked for clarification. "Call it a father's instinct, Sophia. This man doesn't love you. Yes, he showers you with affection, but he always talks about how rich you are. I heard him flexing to his friends that he bagged the rich brat," Dad uttered. I agreed with him and just laughed. "You must be mistaken, Dad. Adriel would never say those things about me. Maya also loves me a lot. I'm sure she would scold Adriel if he tried to joke like that," I reassured him. Sometimes I wish I had listened to my father. He did know what he was talking about. I was a stupid girl in love. My mother passed away 2 years before I got married. My dad was sick and wasn't long for this world. I was desperate to hold on to something that would give me the will to live. Adriel and Maya became those people. My dad was a rich man. He made a series of good investments that made him very financially well off. I worked hard at my job and got a moderate salary as well. All in all, we were pretty comfortable in life. My husband Adriel and his mom Maya weren't that well off. Yes, Adriel did earn more than me, but he came from a very humble background. His field wasn't good enough to make him a millionaire. Adriel did hold some resentment towards it. He and Maya liked sophisticated and expensive things. He often complained about not having enough money. I was always glad to help them out with the little allowance my dad gave me. I even let Adriel and Maya move into my house after marriage, but neither Adriel nor Maya were happy with my house. They said, "It's such a shame that you live in a small house. Your dad literally lives in a mansion. How come you bought such a small townhouse?" my husband inquired. "I don't earn a lot, Adriel. Dad lives in a mansion because he has lots of money. I'm a simple office employee earning a moderate salary. This house was difficult for me to buy as well. Dad helped me out with the down payment," I explained. "Well, if he helped you out, he should have got you a better place. I'm sure your mom had left him something to give you when you became older," my mother-in-law suggested. "I'm not entitled to anything, Maya. Whatever my mom left behind is my dad's now. She died suddenly, so there was no will. I don't mind if I don't get anything. I'm happy with the way things are," I replied. "That's a ridiculous thing to say, Sophia. I sure would have loved to inherit a lot of money. You know what? Your dad should trade houses with us. He lives alone, so he doesn't need the space anyway. Right, Mom?" Adriel said. "Yeah, Adriel's right, Sophia. You can ask?" Maya backed him up. "Absolutely not. That house is my dad's, and he deserves to live comfortably as long as he is alive," I insisted. "Well, he won't be alive for long now that he's sick. We can wait and compromise for a few years and see what happens. Ultimately, everything will be yours after your dad dies. You will have plenty of money to buy a big house and more," Adriel continued. The way Maya and Adriel were already making plans to spend my inheritance was super disturbing. Adding to the anxiety was the fact that they regularly asked me to ask my father for more money. Although it can't be said that we are in need of money. Adriel and Maya simply wanted the millionaire life, even if they weren't one. Honestly, I was getting tired of their behavior. However, the real drama happened after my father passed away. My dad's cancer took him away from me pretty soon. I was devastated but got little support from Adriel or Maya. They were only concerned about the date of the will reading and didn't even help with the funeral. Hell, they refused to attend the funeral because my dad was no one to them. I was heartbroken and furious. At that point, my aunt's words kept coming back to me. I began to suspect them and doubt their good intentions. I was afraid that they were really after my inheritance money. When it came to the reading of the will, they were not allowed to be present when it was read. Adriel and Maya said, "Why the hell are we not allowed to read the will? This is ridiculous. Matthias was my own father-in-law," Adriel resented. "Yes, this is ridiculous. We are family and should be present for this event. We have the right to know what Matthias left in the will. At least my son should be allowed to be there." My mother-in-law backed him up. "Your son is not in the will, Maya, so he cannot read the will. Why are you two so obsessed with inheritance? You didn't even come to the funeral." I was puzzled. It was funny how my dad was suddenly family when it came to getting an inheritance. I was pretty annoyed at Maya and Adriel. What was worse was that they started to hound me as soon as I got back from reading the will. I had a hard time dealing with the grief of losing my father, but I got no words of support or sympathy from them. They simply wanted to know about my inheritance. Maya asked me, "So we have been wondering about something for a while now. How much inheritance did you receive from your parents? You must have got a lot of money. How much money did you get?" she asked with great interest. "My parents unfortunately didn't leave me any money in my inheritance, so I received zero," I replied calmly. "What? You didn't get any money? But your parents were rich. They should have left you something. I don't believe that you didn't get any money. I'm sure you are lying to us, Sophia. There is no way your parents didn't leave you a single penny." My husband was genuinely perplexed. "No, Adriel, there was no money in my inheritance. The will didn't even mention me getting any kind of money. You can check my bank balance in a few days and find out," I added. "But what about your parents' wealth? Who will get those? You are their only child," my mother-in-law kept interrogating me. "I don't know about that, Maya. The lawyer just told me that I didn't get any money. It's fine by me. It was my parents' money, and it's up to them who they would give it to," I concluded. "That is ridiculous. You need to fight for the money. It should be yours. My husband wouldn't stop. There is no money, Adriel. They didn't have much money in the end. Whatever was left was given to charity. They have been planning this for a while now, I finished. Maya and Adriel looked very pissed by what I said. I had no idea why they were being this weird about my inheritance. I wanted to tell them all the details, but something held me back. I have a suspicion that my husband and mother-in-law are up to something. I decided to wait until they digest this news. A month passed, but there was still no money in the account. In the meantime, Adriel grew very restless and stopped being affectionate with me. He was always checking my account and constantly hounding me for information on my inheritance. I was starting to see where this was going. Finally, one day I decided to put an end to it. I showed them my bank statements and said, "See, I told you that I didn't receive anything. I'm not hiding any secret inheritance money from you. Do you believe me now?" I asked demandingly. Wow, our years of hard work just went down the drain then. So her parents weren't rich, and she didn't even get $100 in the will. This is ridiculous. I can't believe this. My mother-in-law was upset. I can't believe this either, Mom. I stayed in this marriage for nothing. I married Sophia for nothing. It was all a waste of time. My husband was indignant. What the hell does that mean, Adriel? Why are you talking like this? I asked him angrily. Why do you think he's saying these things, Sophia? Who the hell would marry you without thinking about the money? My son simply married you so that we can bank on your inheritance. Now I see that you didn't even get a penny, my mother-in-law sadly continued. I can't believe I wasted 5 freaking years on a useless girl like her. I could have done so much better, Adriel added. I was stunned to hear them speak that way about me. I could finally tell that Adriel married me for money. My parents were right about him and his mom. They were freaking gold diggers. I was so freaking done with my husband and mother-in-law. I was breaking inside. But what they said next turned me into stone. Maya looked at Adriel solemnly and said, "What is done, Adriel. But now it's time for you to divorce. So there is no reason why you should stay with her anymore. You will have time to find a new, rich wife. This time we will make sure she actually has some money to her name," she concluded. Are you freaking kidding me, Maya? You are asking Adriel to divorce me over money. Adriel, are you going to listen to her? I continued to be outraged. Of course I would listen to her, Adriel said. I married you so that I and my mom could have a comfortable life. We grew up poor, and I didn't even go to college. I had no way of earning a lot of money, he added. So you pretended to love me and then tricked me into marrying you? You thought that my parents would give me lots of money that I would readily share with you? I wouldn't calm down. Yes, that's what I thought. It was the only way I could give my mom the life she wanted. But now I see that my efforts were in vain. Mom's right. I need to divorce you and keep looking, he uttered. I was stunned by what Adriel said. He said those things so nonchalantly that I started to question my own sanity. Maya and Adriel went on to express their frustration at my marriage and myself. I didn't hear a word after a while. I was too busy coming to terms with what they just threw at me. Their total lack of reaction and Adriel's sudden shift in behavior were both depressing and angering to me. After a point, I was so mad that I wanted to scream and throw things. However, I didn't do any of that. I calmly said, "Okay then, Adriel, if a divorce is what you want, you will get it. I was never the one to say no to your demands. I might as well give in to your demand now as a last favor. So, you will agree to a mutual divorce? It'll save us both a lot of money. By the looks of it, you don't have much to go on anyway," I suggested. "Don't think of this as an opportunity to get alimony from my son. We will fight you tooth and nail before you give up that dream. You better preserve your lawyer fees and agree to a mutual divorce. It'll be best for you," Maya said. "You're right. I don't have a lot of money right now, so I decided something. I will agree to a mutual divorce, but you have to sign a clause saying that we won't share any of our assets with each other," I demanded. "That's not a problem at all. You don't have much, and neither do I at the moment. If you can forego alimony, I'll agree to sign a divorce and won't claim anything from you," he agreed. Adriel and I discussed the details of the divorce and made sure we were on the same page. I could see that Maya and Adriel were both happy about me not making a fuss out of the divorce. I guess they didn't expect me to be so calm about it. Truth be told, ever since that day, I have been crying on my way to and from work. I used to sit in the parking lot of my office and cry for an hour before and after work. Adriel never noticed my puffy eyes or even asked why I was leaving early for work and coming home late. Maya didn't even bother looking at me after she discovered that I had no money. All of their behavior just made me even more determined to get out of the marriage as soon as possible. I actually had Adriel and Maya move out of my house to a rented space in the neighborhood. They soon settled, and while we waited for the divorce to finalize, true to his word, Adriel didn't demand a share of my house. I also didn't ask for alimony. In his eyes, it was a fair deal. While he had no idea just how far I made things out to be, he came to know about it on the day our divorce was finalized. I arrived at their new rented space to hand over my wedding and engagement rings. So I just wanted to return these to you. Since the marriage only brought bad times in my life, I don't want to have any memory of it, I said with sadness in his voice. Are you sure? Do you want to return it? I mean, you might need the money after all. Adriel tried to say no. It's so funny you don't, so you must have laughed at our poverty before. Look where you are now. My son was generous enough to give you the rings. You might need to sell them when your stupid job doesn't pay enough, Maya said venomously. Why do I need to sell rings, Maya? I asked. You don't have to be embarrassed. We already know how your parents didn't leave anything. I guess they lost everything due to poor financial decisions, leaving their daughter destitute. We don't need rings. They're cheap anyway, she concluded. At that point, I laughed very loudly in her face. Maya looked confused, and so did Adriel. I noticed that Adriel was amused by his mother's behavior, and he was also surprised at my laughter. Why the hell are you laughing? Did I say something funny? My mother-in-law asked uncomprehendingly. It's freaking funny how you think I'm destitute, Maya. It's also funny that you think my parents lost all their fortune, I kept smiling. Well, of course you're destitute. Your parents didn't even leave you a penny. They surely messed up and ruined your life by not leaving you an inheritance, she added. I never said that I didn't get an inheritance, Maya. I simply told you that I didn't get any money. My parents did, in fact, leave me plenty of inheritance, I said confidently. What the hell does that mean? You have an inheritance. I'm so confused. My ex-husband was perplexed. My parents could see you and Maya for the little gold diggers you two are, so they made a secret clause in their will. It said that I would receive no monetary inheritance. Instead, I was given this entire neighborhood as my inheritance. I stunned them. What? You own this neighborhood now? How is that possible? We would have known about your inheritance if this was true. We even signed the lease with an estate manager who didn't tell us the name of the owner, Adriel reasoned. My parents wanted me to wait for a year before I got my inheritance. They wanted me to test you two and see if you were really with me for money or love. Well, of course you failed the test, and now you won't get anything from me. Also, the estate manager was appointed by my parents to take care of the property before I inherited it. They were smart people, you know, I explained. That is impossible. I don't believe a word you're saying. You're just embarrassed because you don't have money anymore, Adriel exclaimed. Oh really, Adriel? Is that what you and your mother have concluded from this? Well, why don't you call your landlord and find out from him? I questioned. Don't worry, we would do that. Then everyone will know what a big liar you are, the mother-in-law replied. Maya and Adriel called their landlord and asked about what I said. Since their landlord was the estate manager, he told them everything. Maya and Adriel were stunned. They looked really panicked after cutting the call. You lied to us. You tricked us into thinking that you don't have anything, but you own the entire housing society now? How dare you trick us? So you wanted all your riches to yourself. So you tricked Adriel into divorcing you and made him sign papers that he wouldn't claim anything from you? Maya screamed in panic. I laughed at their insolence when they decided to blame me. It was finally dawning on them that they had messed up royally, and now it was time for some sweet karma. I said, It's funny you accused me of tricking you too, Adriel. You tricked me into marrying you by telling me that you love me. Maya, you helped your son in this plan, and you were the one to tell him to divorce me. If anyone here was being a scammer, it was you two. As for my inheritance, you asked me how much money I got, and I answered truthfully. After I said that, my ex-husband changed before my eyes. This was all a misunderstanding. What happened is in the past. Why don't we just try again in the new light? We did spend 4 years together. It would be a shame to throw it away, he begged. So now you want me back in your life? Funny how you were desperate to start afresh with a new girl. I hear that you are already seeing someone rich. Don't worry, I'll inform her about what a snake you are, I replied. Adriel and Maya started to beg me not to mess up this new relationship. Adriel told me that since I wasn't ready to give him another chance, I shouldn't mess up his future. I told him to freak off. I also informed them that I would kick them out once the property was transferred to my name. They panicked at that and started to beg me even more. In the weeks that followed, Maya and Adriel showed up at my house to beg me to forgive them. Adriel and Maya already have an eviction on their record, so it is unlikely anyone would give them rent. The only reason they were staying on my property was that I asked the estate manager to allow it. I also called Adriel's new victim and told her everything. She was horrified by what Adriel and Maya did and broke up with him instantly. She even showed me the texts. After this fiasco, Adriel and Maya beat down my door and called me names. I promptly called the police and had them removed from my property. After I got my inheritance in my name, I kicked them out very swiftly. They didn't expect me to go through with the threat. They did show up on my property again, and that's when the police were called for the umpteenth time. The cops gave them a stern warning, and I filed for a restraining order. Turns out the entire town knew about what happened. They were essentially disowned by friends and had to leave the town in shame. Last I heard, Maya was working as a waitress while Adriel was working as a house painter. It was a very sweet revenge for what they put me through. It took me a long time to recover from their manipulation and mistreatment, but knowing that they are getting what they deserved gave me closure. I hope this experience serves as a lesson for everyone to be careful about who they marry. Adriel's true nature was revealed to me eventually, and I was able to escape his grasp. I was fortunate to have loving parents who looked out for me even after their death.
"I'm going to dump that old cow in the middle of nowhere," my son-in-law whispered in my ear during the funeral of my husband, the company CEO. When I looked at him, he had an evil grin on his face. "Now that the president has left, the company is finally mine," he hissed. He had been vying for the presidency up until this point and had finally revealed his true nature. But life isn't that simple, my lovely son-in-law. The time was approaching when I would have to teach him a lesson. The battle had begun. "Darling, please lend me your power," I cried out in my heart as I looked at my husband's altar. Melissa is my name. I am a 55-year-old housewife, married for 30 years to my husband Cole. I met my husband as a co-worker, and we became friends, then lovers, before marrying and having our daughter Amber a year later. My husband used to work for a construction company, but when he was 35 he decided to start his own company. I wanted to design, so I became a first-class architect. "I get a rush from seeing a client's vision come true," my husband told me with a twinkle in his eye. He had started a design firm. I wasn't sure if it would work because our daughter was only 4 years old at the time, but we were a team, and I was determined to support my husband. I decided to help my husband and collaborate with him in realizing his dream. Fortunately, the company was growing steadily, and my husband proved that he was capable of running it. I was committed to his idea and have stayed with it for the past 20 years. My husband then hired Nicholas, who was working at an affiliated company. His falling in love with my daughter was an unexpected turn of events, but I thought I could trust Nicholas, who worked so hard for my husband. In retrospect, this was a mistake. Nicholas, my son-in-law, agreed with my husband's point of view and obediently supported my husband as a company executive. My daughter, on the other hand, felt uneasy about his excessive words, possibly because of his excessive zeal for his work. "Hey, Mom, I've been feeling kind of restless in the shower lately," Amber said. "Why?" I asked. "Maybe it's because he's been drinking, but Nicholas said, 'I wish that old man would just screw himself. I can increase the profitability of this company and I know how to do it,'" she uttered. "What a horrible thing to say. That's awful," I replied, and added, "They say that when you're drunk, your true feelings come out, but I doubt he'd ever betray your father." Although my daughter's words lingered in my mind, I forced myself to believe Nicholas was also thinking about the company. We had no way of knowing what his true intentions were at the time. A year ago, seemingly out of nowhere, something happened. My husband Cole, who had always been in good health, began to look unwell and lost his appetite. He also frequently complained about back pain, so we decided to have him examined. The outcomes were disastrous. A serious disease was discovered which couldn't be treated, and he didn't have much time to live. Only my daughter's family and I knew this. We were all concerned about our future, but Nicholas, who was with us at the time, reassured us. "I hope Cole gets better. The company will be fine. You can put everything on me," he said with confidence. Nicholas's reassuring words sounded strange. Although I assumed these words were meant to reassure us, the triumphant look on his face filled me with unease. Gradually, the attitude towards Nicholas and the company became worse and worse. According to one of my husband's longtime subordinates, he had started speaking down to those around him, and other employees were having a bad time. Some of them left the company because they couldn't stand Nicholas's antics, and others lost motivation to work. "Nicholas, you're very dedicated to your work," I told him, thinking he might be overwhelmed by the fact that he had to keep the company afloat. "But could you please consider your employees' feelings as well?" I concluded. "What? You're making a serious statement. You should just stay by your husband's side. He looks to be on the verge of dying at any moment without interfering in my affairs." He smirked. "Nonetheless, Cole has carefully taken care of this business," I replied. "You know the company is almost mine now. You should be grateful that I, a wise man, have remained silent and followed this jerk of a president until now," Nicholas snapped. When I heard this ear-splitting tirade, I couldn't believe it, and the anxiety I was feeling the other day grew even stronger. Nicholas's words and actions became worse with each passing day, and he made remarks that put pressure on the staff. Employees who had been with the company since its inception had been doing what they had always done, obtaining contracts by repeatedly talking to clients about their needs and wants. This was my husband's policy, but Nicholas responded with a blunt statement. "In this world, efficiency is everything. Don't be such a jerk. I'm going to fire you," he said. Furthermore, he switched to a method of sharing reports on a computer, which occasionally caused problems for the older employees. "Can't you old people even use a computer correctly? Get out of here. You're stifling my progress. I don't want you to work for me." He'd yell at them, kick over the wastebaskets, and make them pick up the paper scraps that were scattered around. After all, when our long-term business partners began to suffer as a result of the recession, he said, "We are not doing this for free, so we will no longer do business with you." He started destroying the trust that had been built over time. When my daughter Amber asked for my advice on his actions, I was at a loss for what to do. Lately, he's been treating Amber like a servant. He'd get furious if she resisted in any way, she told me. "Who would marry you if you weren't the boss's daughter? Your personality and appearance are not my type," Nicholas had spat at her, as if looking at something disgusting. "Mom, Nicholas has changed," Amber said. "No, the Nicholas we see now is the real Nicholas, and we were duped," my daughter added, sobbing with frustration. After hearing about Nicholas's actions from his subordinate, my husband was also concerned about his employee. He summoned me to his bedside one day and asked for a favor. "All right, I'll take care of it, so don't be concerned," I promised my husband. After a while, an accident happened. Despite his best efforts, my husband died within the year of being told he had little time to live. I couldn't stop crying at my husband's funeral, remembering how we shared similar values, had never argued, and had lived a happy life thanks to him. However, when we were listening to the priest's sermon, Nicholas brought his face close to mine and whispered in my ear, "I'm going to dump that old cow in the middle of nowhere." I noticed that he had an evil smile when I looked at him. This was Nicholas's true nature. He had been on the board of directors since my husband's hospitalization, and now that he was gone, he must have felt secure in his position as president. From now on, I can make the company do whatever I want. I could almost hear his thoughts. Nicholas, who has taken the world for granted, has no idea what fate awaits him. From now on, I'll be the one to put an end to this. It is now time for me to keep my promise to you. Give me your strength. I looked at my husband's coffin and confirmed my resolve. A shareholders' meeting was called following the funeral. Nicholas, the director, arrived late and sat down on a chair in the center of the room, looking around at everyone. He was startled when he saw me sitting at the same table as him, and his eyes fluttered several times. "Why the old head?" I could hear him mumble. I had to hold back my laughter. "The next item on the agenda is the removal of Nicholas from the board of directors," the moderator said. My son-in-law, who had been acting distracted, was horrified. "Hey, wait a minute, what are you on about? I didn't hear what you were saying." He tried to stand up so quickly that he almost fell off his chair, and everyone in the room loved Nicholas's misfortune. In fact, my husband gave me a majority stake in his company several years ago. Whoever owns the most shares has a strong influence over a company. I had exercised that right by requesting that the board of directors call a shareholders' meeting. Nicholas was aware of the shareholders' meeting, but he had no idea it was to discuss his dismissal. "How can I be fired without a valid reason? I am the president's son-in-law," he asked, perplexed. "It appears that you have been very cold to the employees who have worked for us until now," I explained. "This will cause the company to lose ground to the competition. That's why you amateurs have no idea what you're talking about," he concluded. "I'm not saying we can experiment with new approaches. I'm saying we should look after our business partners as well as our employees," I continued. The shareholders nodded their heads as they listened to me. They understood and agreed with Cole's ideas about the company. Nicholas's eyes filled with rage, and he yelled at me, "Things like that won't lead to the company's profit." To which I objected, "You work solely for your own benefit, not for the benefit of the company, don't you? I know the truth." "What are you talking about?" He was confused. "Nicholas, you're completely out of line. Take a look at this," I said. I held up the internal documents that my late husband had entrusted to me in front of Nicholas. "Have you been misappropriating company funds for your own personal use?" I asked. The room erupted at that point, and all eyes were drawn to Nicholas. He was agitated, and there was a cold sweat on his brow. "How did you find this?" he mumbled. "It was given to me by Cole. That man had a customer-first policy, but you denied it and attempted to change it, didn't you? That's why he wanted me to bring this up," I said firmly. "Damn, it's not fair of you to be snooping around." Nicholas was outraged. "The company cannot afford to have embezzlers on its payroll," I continued. "So who will be the next president? There's nobody else but me," Nicholas stated. "Don't be concerned. My husband has requested that I take over," I stunned him. What? What nonsense are you on about? A novice hag cannot run a business?" Nicholas exclaimed angrily. It's no surprise he said that because he knows nothing about me. Because the company was still small, it was customary for the company's executives to meet in a home conference room. At these meetings, I always sat next to my husband, the company's president, and voiced my opinions. My husband trusted me because I knew everything about the company's inner workings, even though I didn't let anyone know. However, I had always been in the know, and when my husband transferred those majority shares to me, I assumed I would eventually pass them on to our son-in-law, but that will never happen again. "I'm going to pretend I didn't hear that," I said coldly. Realizing his predicament, Nicholas flipped out and cried to me, pleading for forgiveness. "Please, don't fire me. Please accept my apologies for all of my disrespect. I swear I will work for the company for the rest of my life. I'll even return the money I stole," he began to beg. "Do you really believe you can get away with it?" I was surprised. "I intended to use the funds to start a new business. It was not for monetary gain." Nicholas made excuses. "That's funny. You've given women luxury foreign cars, brand-name goods, and jewelry as gifts, and it doesn't sound like you're ready to start a business with that money anyway. Do you really believe you can start a business with the money you stole?" I said mockingly and added, "In any case, you've been fired." The cowardly Nicholas now brought up the subject of my daughter. If you make me suffer, your daughter will suffer as well. Is that what you're looking for? He started threatening. Amber has decided to divorce you, and she should have packed her belongings and left by now. She's been expressing her displeasure with you for a long time, I noted. Oh no! Nicholas panicked. Oh, and I've reported the embezzlement to the police, so be ready, I added. Nicholas was later removed from the board of directors, and he was arrested and imprisoned for embezzlement. My daughter had abandoned him, leaving him to fend for himself. As the president of the company, I am busy every day, but I am working hard to grow the company my husband left me. I will continue to respect the employees who have served us for many years, and while I will implement new ideas, my philosophy of putting myself in the shoes of the customer will not change. My daughter, who is no longer stressed, greets me with a smile at home. She's still young, and her life is just getting started. I will keep a close eye on her future. Are you nervous? My husband asked, watching me adjust my clothes in front of the mirror. I kept glancing at the clock every few seconds. I am, I admitted. I really didn't want to be late on my first day of work. It was my first job, and I hoped to make a good impression on my colleagues and superiors. I would have left for work long ago, but Leroy had offered to drive me there, and now we risked being late together. All because of his mother, who had shown up at the crack of dawn in tears with her things, asking to stay with the children. There was no time to sort things out, so, hastily calming her and giving her permission to make herself at home, we hurried off to work. When Leroy and I came home in the evening, we realized what a mistake we had made by giving her free rein to do as she pleased. To start with, I couldn't find my slippers. They turned out to be on the feet of my beloved mother-in-law, who was calmly walking around in plush bear slippers on the bare floor where a fluffy rug used to lie. Skylar, I thought I gave you the guest slippers. I tried to hint that it was time to return my shoes. Oh, Hannah, yes you did, but they were so cold, Skylar replied. You young people don't feel the cold, but I have sore feet. Your slippers are so comfortable, and you can wear the guest ones, can't you? It's not a big deal for you, is it? She explained. As a matter of fact, it was a big deal for me because these bear-shaped slippers were given to me by my late grandmother. I wore them carefully and didn't lend them to anyone, but she didn't know that. So I decided to keep silent. After all, it was my fault that I didn't warn Skylar. And where is the carpet? I asked, looking around. Oh, I took it to be cleaned. Forgive me, my dear, but there was so much dust in it as if it hadn't been swept for years. You need to take better care of it, or you will be breathing in all that dust later, she explained. But we bought it less than a month ago, and we clean it every day, I protested. Well, draw your own conclusions, dear. It means that you should have done a more thorough job of cleaning it, Skylar said. I didn't want to engage in an argument, so I preferred to keep silent. Besides, I was tired. My first day at work was interesting but exhausting. All I wanted was to take a shower and go to bed as soon as possible. Why are you lying down? Who's going to cook supper? My mother-in-law rudely barged into the bedroom and stared menacingly at me. We already had dinner at the restaurant. I'm tired, I replied. Well, she declared, what kind of dinner is that? The restaurant's meals are tiny and you can't even understand what they're cooking. Come on, get up, let's go. We'll cook something. Have you decided to starve your mother-in-law and your husband? Skylar insisted. Sighing, I got out of bed and followed her to the kitchen. Leroy was already there, apparently having been roped into the task by his omnipresent mother. He was peeling potatoes and glancing at the television, which was hanging in the corner. While all three of us were preparing food, my mother-in-law announced, I've come for an indefinite period of time. I've quarreled with my husband, and now, deciding to show my character, I've moved in with the children. I wouldn't budge until he apologizes. Knowing my father-in-law, I almost cried. I realized that Skylar would be staying with us for a very, very long time. My bad feelings didn't deceive me. The weeks dragged on, and she showed no intention of returning to her own nest. Her father-in-law, apparently enjoying all the delights of bachelor life, was in no hurry to take in his wife who had moved into our house. What's worse, it seemed that Skylar liked this state of affairs. Now she didn't even need to cook. There was no need to wake up at the crack of dawn, cook food for her husband, pay bills, or do laundry. All day long she watched Turkish series on television and occasionally reminded us of the need to do this or that household chore. Even Leroy started to look at his mother with a somewhat savage expression on his face. He even tried to talk to her, but she replied as before, "I'll leave when your father apologizes. End of discussion." We had to call the father and ask him to come and take his wife home. "Are you out of your mind?" Leroy's father said when we reached him on the phone. "For the first time in so many years, I feel alive and free here. There's no way I'm taking her back. She's your mother, by the way. Aren't you ashamed?" Leroy's father hung up the phone and even blocked his son so that he wouldn't bother him again. Ashamed and disappointed, Leroy threw his phone aside. He hadn't expected that his marriage would be threatened by such a situation. I had already hinted that my patience was wearing thin, and we were, after all, living in my apartment. Leroy had lived with his parents before getting married and was still registered there. Now Leroy knew that if my patience snapped, I wouldn't think twice about kicking both him and his mother out. However, it seemed that my mother-in-law wasn't at all concerned about. Leroy realized this after a month of her stay at our home. We had just returned from work and were standing in the hallway when Skylar came out of the room, silently approached the dresser, took out my wallet, and opening it, took out all the cash. My jaw dropped at such audacity and my eyes flashed with anger. "Mom, what do you think you're doing? That's my wallet!" I exclaimed. "I know it is. Why is there so little money?" Skylar responded nonchalantly. "It was my first salary. Put it back right this second," I demanded. "This is my money," Skylar stated, tucking the bills into her bra and adjusting it demonstratively. "And what's the big deal then?" she wondered sincerely. "Everything in our family is shared, including money. You should be ashamed. You were supposed to know this when you were getting married," she added, waving her finger at me. "Well, fine. I'll show you what's haired means," I retorted angrily, locking myself in the bathroom and then going to bed without having supper. I didn't speak to Leroy and got up at dawn. My plan was simple, to show my mother-in-law that she was a guest here, and that Leroy and I had our own family and our own rules. When Leroy went to the bathroom in the morning, he almost ruined the whole plan with his loud laughter. "Keep it down, you'll ruin everything," I snapped at him and continued my task. Skylar didn't feel like getting up. The bed in this apartment was simply luxurious, not like hers back at home. She stretched and allowed herself a little more time in bed. The children were at work. She had no need to hurry. Now she will lie down for a while, then have breakfast and watch another episode of her favorite TV series. She got up, stretched, did a few bends and squats, and left the room. Then she went to the kitchen and froze in shock. Almost every piece of furniture and household appliance was adorned with a yellow sticker. I was sitting in the kitchen, sipping juice from a glass. "Why aren't you at work?" Skylar asked. "They allowed me to work from home," I replied calmly. "And what's this?" Skylar grabbed the sticker on the fridge with 2 fingers and peeled it off. Then she carefully read what was written on the sticker and turned purple. "What the hell is that supposed to mean?" she exclaimed in bewilderment. I stretched, scratched my head, took a sip of juice, and then replied, "These, mother, are the prices for services in our house. I calculated everything for the 3 of us, me, Leroy, and you. Your price is on the stickers," I stated calmly. "Why is bread so expensive? Are you out of your mind taking money from your mother, especially for bread?" Skylar shouted. "Well, excuse me," I shrugged. "You took away my salary and food won't buy itself just as bills won't pay themselves. Leroy, of course, will take some of your expenses on himself as your son, but not all of them," I concluded. "Is Leroy aware of this?" Skylar demanded. "Of course he is. In our family we have a rule that we all pay for everything together. You live with us, so please pay your share," I stated firmly. "The nerve you have. How dare you? And you've turned my son against me. I will never set foot in your house again. You may shove your food you know where," Skylar yelled, trying to tear off another sticker, this time from the coffee maker, but there was another one underneath. Coffee, water, cream, electricity. "Yes, everything needs to be paid separately," I remarked sarcastically, and smiled as sweetly as I could. Red as a lobster, my mother-in-law stormed into her room, and for a moment there was silence. Then her voice was heard. "Hello? Have you lost your wife there by any chance? Because it seems to me you have. Come immediately, pick me up. I said right now, and God forbid you're even a minute late, she exclaimed demandingly. Skylar's husband apparently forgot to block his beloved wife's number on his phone. She came out of the room already dressed and carrying her bag. Here, take it. She threw the money on the table. I'll tell my son everything. He doesn't need such a wife, the scheming creature, she snapped. My father-in-law arrived 15 minutes later. As he escorted his wife out of the apartment, he turned to me. How did you do that? He asked, impressed. It's all the years of living with my brothers and sisters. I winked at him and smiled. Respect. Write later how you pulled this off and I'll give it a try, he said with a chuckle. As soon as the door closed behind the couple, I asked loudly, Leroy, where are you? Leroy, who had been hiding in the bedroom all this time, came out almost crawling on all fours. Coming, dear, he began. You're really something, Hannah. I wouldn't even have thought of that, he uttered admiringly. To be honest, the whole thing was a major embarrassment. It went a bit too far, but really I couldn't take it anymore. I love your mom very much, but not when she lives with us, I admitted. Don't worry, she's a big girl. She'll survive. She'll calm down, think it over, and she might even come to make amends, you'll see. Leroy reassured me. Hope so, I said with a sigh. And then, laughing and pushing each other, we started removing the multiple stickers because they were no longer needed.